Yo, what's up guys? Imagine Create Destroy here, and in this week's video, I'm gonna make this futuristic tank fight this giant gorilla. While I put the tank model kit together, I'll get into the inspiration for this build. I was browsing at my local hobby shop in the 1/72nd scale section, my favorite scale by the way, and I saw this awesome tank model kit. And I knew I wanted to use it for something, I just wasn't sure what to use it for yet. So, sat for a few weeks collecting dust until I saw this giant gorilla at a different game store, and I knew it would be perfect for a diorama with this tank. And that's where futuristic tank versus giant gorilla was born. Exhilarating stuff, I know. After a while of thinking how I was going to set the scene, I was in between a couple ideas, the first being a cityscape, kind of like King Kong, or a jungle, and I decided on the jungle, the idea being the military from the future was scouting a small island after detecting a large spike of radioactive activity. That, for whatever reason, was constantly on the move around the island, because they were in fear of a nuclear attack. Little did they know, a gorilla enlarged by extreme radioactive exposure was lying in wait for them. Okay, now that I'm done putting that together, I'll start painting. First, I'll base coat the tank with a blue-gray color. This kit came with the pre-cut masking tape to add the digital camo, so I'll put that on now. Then, once they're all on, I'll use my airbrush to add the next layer of paint to the tank. Fortunately, I'm a bit of an idiot, and I got a terrible angle of me painting on the dark gray top coat. But I edited it the best I could, so it doesn't look too bad. Then I'll hit y'all with some sweet ASMR of me peeling off that masking tape, revealing that awesome tactical paint job. If you're getting bored of watching me paint, well, too damn bad, because we still got a ways to go. Next I'll paint the tracks black, then move on to weathering the tank. The weathering process is pretty simple, because I don't really know what I'm doing. Start with the dry brushing of silver metallic paint over the whole model. After, I used a panel liner to, well, line the panels. This just helps give some separation between the panels and adds a nice depth. Then, bust out my streak and grime by AK Interactive and liberally apply it on the whole model, streaking it from top to bottom. I let it dry for a bit, then I used my finger to rub it away and soften up the look a little bit. I'm not quite done with the weathering, but I'll do the last step once the model's in place on the diorama. So for now, I'll work on painting the gorilla. But first, I'll cut it off the base. Then we could base coat the little guy with the black through my airbrush, but a spray can would work perfectly fine as well. Once it dries, I dry brushed it with a dark gray, then a medium gray, just to bring out the details and add a nice depth to the model. For the mouth, I used the Bugman's Glow, then wet blended a magenta to add some color variation. Lastly, I painted the teeth with a very light brown, and I'll set him to the side and we can move on to the base for the diorama. I cut a rectangle of XPS foam off camera and used my models to get an idea of the layout. It was looking a little flat for my liking, so I'll give the tank some high ground with a few more pieces of XPS foam. This will also help add some depth to the build and makes it look a little less flat, because flat is boring. I hot glued those on off camera and then carved away at it to make a hill. Before I start the base, I wanted some rocks for it. I'll mix up some plaster to make some plaster rocks. I have some molds from some previous builds that I'm going to use, and I'm going to make a bunch of rocks for any future builds. We can pour it in and let it dry, then demold them and clean them up a bit before moving on. With the models in place, I'll glue down some of the rocks, then I'll get out a terrain paste. Any will do because I'm going to paint over it anyway in the steps to come. After the paste is down, I'll sprinkle on some small rocks, desert soil by AK Interactives while it's still wet. This just helps hold it in place. Next, I'll put the tank into place. blending it into the ground with some more terrain paste and more desert soil so it doesn't look like it's just placed on the base, especially since I'm going for a wet jungle vibe. I want it sinking into the mud. Now, I was gonna glue these sticks down, but I realized the texture and colors they had were already amazing, so I decided I'll use them as is, and I'll glue them back on when I'm done painting the base. I started the painting process with a thick layer of dark brown, followed up with another layer after it dried for full coverage. Then I splotched on a light brown, dark earthy green, and a black, kind of wet blending them into each other. It looks bad now, but the wash will really bring it together. But before the wash, I'll paint the rocks with a dark brown, 2 reds, and a yellow. Also wet blending them just to give a nice smooth transition between colors. Finishing them off with a nice dark red wash. Then I'll hit the whole base with a brown wash except for the rocks. Make sure to let that fully dry before the next step, which is to dry brush the ground with a light brown. Then dry brush the rocks with a light, almost pastel red, softening it up with a white before the second dry brushing. I'll add some details to a few of the rocks by stippling on a greenish blue, orange, yellow, and almost white green color. Then I glued on the aforementioned sticks before adding a pigment powder to the base and the tank in some selective areas. We're getting pretty close to finishing this build, but before I glue down the grass tufts, I want to get the monkey into place so we can glue the tufts around him. I'll drill some holes in the bottom, add a little bit of armature wire, just so it supports him a little better because he is pretty top heavy, then glue him down. I'll hot glue some cardstock into place. This will help hide the gap lines between the layers of foam. Then I'll trim off the excess. I wanted to do this before adding the grass tufts just because when they're in place it is a little hard to kind of get in there and trim everything off. Then I'll base coat it with the cheap acrylic black paint and we'll move on to gluing down the grass tufts. I use a bunch of different tufts to add variety and variation, as well as some bushes and little white flowers. The more you use, the better the end result here. I make clumps to help it look a little more realistic. Lastly, adding some laser cut jungle plants. Next, I use this puddle effect to add some puddles, popping the bubbles with a safety pin, then feathering them out with a paintbrush to blend them into the ground. Now, they did end up sinking into the base, so I did add a second layer. I added this shot just to give you all an idea of how many paints I actually use for these dioramas. I thought it was pretty cool to see them all laid out next to each other. And finally, I'll paint the sides with the black 4.0. Thank you everybody for watching, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next week. Peace.